Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Scouting Mass. I'm Richard Belford, your co-host, along with Alex Motok, and our special guest today, Brigadier General retired Peter Green, former commander of the 104th. We're here live. We recorded, you'll see it or hear it not live, but we are here live at Barnes Regional Airport, adjacent to the Barnes Air National Guard Base. Welcome, sir.
Rich,
Thanks for
Alex,
coming.
thank you for having me here. Pleasure to be here today on such a beautiful day out here at Barnes.
We're glad to be with you, sir. This should be a really great interview, and it's a bit of a comeback for us because we've had some busy weeks, and so we haven't recorded for a while. So this is a great way to get back into it. Thank you for joining us.
No, it's my pleasure. Rich reached out and said, "Hey, I hear that you might be in the neighborhood. Would you consider coming over and being on the podcast?" And I said, "Absolutely, Chief. Anything I can do, let me know."
That's awesome. Awesome. Great. We really appreciate that. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us. And it's good to see you again. I haven't seen you for a little while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Our history, we crossed paths a few times, and I'll let you tell everyone about your background. But I had joined the 104th in December of '89, the same month and year as another person that's been on the show, and that's Scott Rice.
Yeah.
And was at Barnes. I think I relocated to the Southwest when I probably passed your way when we were both enlisted. Came back to visit one time, and I think, correct me if I'm mistaken, you were chief of CBPO one time.
That's right.
Yes.
That was called the military personnel flight.
Yep.
You know, they made the conversion from the chief base personnel office to consolidated base personnel office to the military personnel flight.
Okay. So I remember coming back to visit friends from personnel and meeting you there. I believe you were captain at the time.
That sounds about right.
And that was probably around 1993, somewhere about there.
That also sounds about right.
And so I moved on back to living in the West for a while. And before I came back to New England, I ended up working my way back to Connecticut to the 103rd, working as a contract superintendent. And I think at the time, I believe you may be chief of staff or director of the air staff in Massachusetts.
Joint Force
Just
Headquarters.
before you came here, Joint Force Headquarters. And I remember seeing your name on some email. We were communicating via email. You were helping me transition from Connecticut Guard back to Mass to the 102nd to take on the weekend superintendent role there. And after that, you moved to director of maintenance here, I believe, maintenance commander.
Came back and became the F-15 maintenance commander.
Path still crossed because I caught you a few months later, a couple years later, brought in a friend of mine, a former NCO from the 103rd, helped him get a commission in the Navy Reserves, maintenance officer Sean Drake. We brought him back as an Air Force captain for your group. And then shortly after, I saw you at the Time Conference and Southbridge a little bit.
So yeah, a lot of paths.
A lot of crossing, yeah.
Just about the Guard,
just
military community.
Just like the military, we always do this. You run into people, especially in the Guard, you run into folks you've worked with or crossed to.
Yeah.
Each one. So
it's the best having the opportunity to see friends that you served with in the past. You kind of catch up real quickly, and it's like you haven't even been separated for too long because it just feels so natural to be back together.
So I kind of jumped around our paths crossing, but if you tell us a little bit about your background, what motivated you to join the 104th and the military in general?
Oh boy, okay.
Tell us a little bit about your career.
Yeah. So I grew up in Springfield. I went to Putnam Vocational High School. I was an HVAC graduate.
Nice.
I was actually doing HVAC with a company in West Springfield. And, I had this bug. I've always had this bug, and it kind of relates to scouting, so we'll probably get back into that at some point. But I had this bug that I wanted to serve more in. So I actually thought about active duty. And I went down Springfield in the old Federal Building, and I talked to the recruiters down there. And I thought that, the Coast Guard might be something I'm interested in, kind of like that Homeland Security thing there. And then I talked to an Air Force recruiter. And it's funny, the Air Force recruiter actually said to me, well, where do you live? And I said, I live over at East Springfield. He goes, you live by Westover. Man, you could go check out the reserve. And I said, okay, I'll probably go check out, the Air Force Reserve. And he goes, and there's this base in Westfield, Mass. He goes, I think it's a Guard base. He goes, they fly. I'm not really sure what they fly. I think they're A-10s, but you could also check that out. And I said, I appreciate that, And so I did. I kind of went up and I happened to check out Barnes first before Westover. And I think if it had gone the other way around, I might have been actually a member of Westover first, but you never know. And I got on base after making an appointment with the recruiter, and I saw the A-10s, and I saw the activity, and I saw the base there. And it was just something said, wow, this is where I want to be. This is where I want. I'm going to start a part-time career in the Massachusetts Air National Guard here at the 104th Tactical Fighter Group at the time. We weren't a wing considered at that stage. And did the whole thing. They said, what do you want to do? And they said, hey, here's your scores. You can do all these things. And part of me, I had a lot of friends that were in law enforcement at the time. And they offered me, like, you can be a firefighter, you can be a mechanic, you can be a cop. And I said, I think, I'll do that cop thing. So joined 1982 off, to basic training. Spent a couple of years part-time doing HVAC still. And then kind of said, well, I've got these educational benefits that I'm aware of here, and I didn't go to a college prep school. I went to a vocational school, and I said, well, I think I'm going to use them. So I enrolled in STCC here in Springfield and got into their communications department. Actually, I have an associate's degree in telecommunications.
Nice. Why aren't you fixing this?
Why aren't you fixing this? Yeah, get over here and fix that. So, and so I started to go to school there. And at that point, at the time, the chief of security police, Senior Master Sergeant Whit Tilbrooks, said to me, hey, we're looking for some folks to come out here. You want to come out here full time and work full time? And I said, well, I'm in school. He goes, well, you can work swing shift, or you can work midnight to 8. And I said, well, okay, this will be good. So next thing I know, I kind of left the HVAC trade, jumped into full time as a state security guard out here at the Barnes in the security forces or security police squadron at the time, and started going to school. Nice. And I kind of carried that through. Graduated, went to UMass Amherst, enrolled in their communications department with an undergraduate minor in marketing, and was working my way through school. So my whole undergraduate experience was probably atypical. I just went to school. Went to work, went to sleep, went to school, went to work, went to sleep until I kind of graduated out of that. The rest of the career, and fast forward here, was had some great mentors throughout my career, both enlisted and officer. Somebody that helped me think about an officer career was Captain Gordon Duchesne. He was a civil engineering officer. He was a friend of mine, and he said, hey, didn't you just finish your bachelor's degree? I said, I did. And he goes, well, what's your plan? I said, I'm going to be a chief of security police. He goes, okay, that's a really good plan. He goes, are you open to, other options? I said, well, what are you thinking about? He goes, well, I think I've seen you. I worked with him on 9th Air Force inspection teams. I was kind of the team leader of an OP4. We'd go and we'd basically attack other bases, and as security forces, and they'd have to, we'd have to basically debrief them on where their vulnerabilities were and that kind of stuff. And he said, I've seen you out there, at that time I was a staff sergeant. And he said, I think you've got leadership skills. And I said, oh, well. He goes, listen, do me a favor. Go and take the Air Force officer qualification.
FOPT.
He goes, if you pass, then we can talk more. And I'm like, if I pass? Okay, all right. So I went and took the test, and I passed. And he said, okay, so that's the first thing. That's the first hurdle. Now I need you to start applying for jobs. And in
what sort of things did they ask you on that test?
On the test? Oh, well, yeah. It's just like your ASVAB type test, but it kind of takes it up a little bit level here, and they're looking at your reasoning scores, your communication scores, obviously your pilot scores, if you have a sense of orientation that could you actually be qualified to be a pilot? So
how'd you do on that, if I may ask?
Not well. I did okay on the test, but as the Air Force told me that somehow I seem to be colorblind in the color orange, which I didn't quite get then, and I don't quite get now, because I can look at that cord over there, and that cord is clearly orange. But
interesting. I was encouraged to take that test as well.
Yeah.
And there were a couple officer openings coming up. They kind of pushed me in that direction with another candidate, and we were taking a huge auditorium, 2 of us, and I think we both were of a certain age where we probably wouldn't be aviators. And the gentleman giving the test says, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about pilot and navigator. I have to sit there anyway. Do your best."
Yeah.
Right. And I actually passed that side of it. I'm like, great. You wasted your time on this. I'm like, no, you never waste your time knowing.
You never waste your time, because obviously you have options, and you think about those options. And the other thing that was important is that the folks that we see right now signing up for undergraduate pilot training, they get selected, they go through a board and they get selected. They have a burning passion to become a pilot. They will cut off their left arm, he or she, to be a pilot. You know, they have that burning, and I didn't have that burning passion to be a pilot. I mean, I appreciated pilots, I appreciated airplanes. That's why I joined the Air National Guard versus something else, and I wanted to be part of that. So I think, you know, in hindsight, that was the right call for me because, again, you should be passionate if we're about ready to basically send you off and have spend about $2 million to get you trained to be a pilot.
Can
Yeah, go ahead.
Forgive me.
Yeah,
Forgive me. I don't want to talk about me, but just for a second to contrast. So I was born in Romania. I came over in '85, and you know we were immigrants. We came to America, went to Germany, to Berlin, separated geographically in '86, still before the wall came down. So, you know, moved around too much and all that kind of stuff. But I mentioned to you that the whole goal of this show is to sort of think about scouting values. Think about the value of scouting values to make a little pun out of it. But what I heard you say in what you just said, I heard you talk about these pivotal mentors in your life a little bit. It's not like you talked about them a ton, but you kept on mentioning them. I had this guy, you know, pushed me forward. And I don't mean guy and then, you know, could be guy or girl, but then I met this person and they pushed me forward. Then I met this person and they pushed me forward. And of course, at some point you're going to tell us about your scout experience, right? Yep. But hearing your story and, you know, many stories like yours in my life, I realize now what a loss it was to me that I didn't have any scouting experience, right? In Romania, we had nothing like the Scouts. We had something very politicized, which was called the, I call it the Falcons of the Fatherland because it's got that alliteration thing. But in Romanian, it's Șoimii Patriei. So the Falcons of the Fatherland or Motherland, however you want to spin that. But it was a political thing meant to bring kids out in their little red cravats whenever, you know, Ceausescu or, you know, so our job was to sort of be like background in the communist story of how great Ceausescu was, and that's how they used us, right? So it wasn't the come out, come camping, come swimming, come shooting, come archery, come climb walls like what we do at Moses. So I noticed that in your story, and I wanted to underline it for folks because for so many people that we meet, I don't mean that just on this podcast, but in general, they tell the story of how scouting introduced them to somebody, and I myself now at a later stage in life, right, through my friend and mentor Rich, have met people within scouting that have given me a leg up on understanding society, a leg up on understanding how to communicate with very senior leaders. Of course, you're a general, right? And I want to say to anybody who's listening out there, listen to what he's talking about, right? Hear the story of how mentorship, starting in Scouts and then later in his career, in General Green's career, right? Listen to how that mentorship matters. So I'll give you that to comment on if you like. If you allow me one more sentence.
Yeah, go ahead.
Within the last 2 weeks, a young lady at my civilian job has approached me and asked me to be her mentor. We now have an official mentor program. And I told her that I was so flattered by this, and she was kind of blown away that I was flattered by her choosing me, which is an interesting, to me, it's this thing where you don't see yourself from the outside, right? I think I'm just a guy who's doing the best he can, and you know, I'm handling some complex litigation, and like, who cares, right? This is my job, I'm doing it. But to her, she thinks, and of course, I'm not saying this to aggrandize myself, but she said I have quiet confidence, which I took that compliment. Yeah, I'll take that, put it right here. So comment on that. Comment on mentorship. Comment on mentorship. Comment on whatever you want out of that little.
Well, there's a lot to unpack.
There was. Sorry.
So let me step back and regroup and kind of think about what your audience here is looking for here. So, scouting. So I got into scouting when I was 12 or 13, I think, right around that time frame. And it was a pivotal point in my youth. My mom and dad were getting divorced. I was already kind of out with a group of folks, guys, young guys, and we were already kind of not doing kind of some of the things that we should be doing. And another group of friends I had, two of them were in scouts, and they said, you should come to us into the next troop meeting. It was Troop 45 in Springfield was the time here, and we used to meet at a church. And I said, okay. So I went to the scouting, at this point, and I had long, kind of curly hair at that stage. Nobody really cared at that point. That was great. And I found that the folks that were there and that the scoutmasters, obviously all volunteer scoutmasters, they were really there to impart the scouting values and to be there and to mentor these young men here, young boys, and going to be men in ways that things and experiences that will help shape them. And I didn't really get that at that point because, of course, I was too young and I was still kind of bifurcated between kind of the bad boy group and scouting group, and I was trying to figure out where I was going to land here at this stage. And I kind of pulled away from the other group and kind of stayed on the scouting side of the house, and kind of was able to, as a city kid, do a lot of things that, quite honestly, I don't think that I would have had the opportunity to do. We were talking earlier off record here that, up at the Moses Scout Camp there, and, being able to go out, be camping and do fishing and archery and marksmanship scores, and, basically being able to learn survival and navigation and all those kind of things were, a thing that, things, experiences that a city kid wouldn't necessarily be exposed to at that point. And so I found that all very interesting. I worked my way up, had good mentors. At that point, we had, of course, the senior scouts there. They would mentor the junior scouts as you were working your way up through the ranks there at this stage and going for your merit badges. And, I remember how proud it is that, when you got your first merit badge, and then your second, and before you know it, you got a whole sash full of merit badges, it was really, I think, important to kind of keep that momentum going and kind of learning continuously in Scouts. It's kind of helped me kind of understand that I could do a lot of things. I could really do a lot of things. And those Scoutmasters really were the ones that were able to do that. And so, I worked my way up through, got into the explorers at that point, the leaders of this that helped the Scoutmasters with the rest of the troop. I was an explorer for a while and I was a life scout. And had the opportunity to start discussions on what my Eagle Scout project was going to be, and started to put some things around all that. And as I was telling you guys, that was I think it was 16 going on 17 or somewhere around that.
Right.
And cars and girlfriends started to become even more of my life here. And yeah, I ended up spending more time with my girlfriend at that time than with the scouting. And so, long story, sad story short, is I never actually executed my Eagle Scout project. And, when I talk to people who are Eagle Scouts, like General Rice, who I just saw over at the 104th there with the F-35 arrival, they achieved that goal. And I think, and I'm very goal oriented, my life becomes goal. And I said, what? How come I wasn't able to do that? And I think I got lost a little bit. I think I got lost a little bit, and maybe one of my mentors could have kind of said, "Yeah, we understand that girlfriends are important and cars are important, but this is something that you should continue to keep important in your life and go for that because there's not too many Eagle Scouts out there. It's very hard to achieve." And when I see where I live now down in Carolina Beach, North Carolina, we have Eagle Scouts doing their projects out there. I always post something on that to say congratulations on a job great. It was well done. It wasn't easy to get that accomplished at this stage. So scouting kind of helped me start to think about service before self, started thinking me about how to serve more my community, started me thinking about serving my country. And so that's the kind of the catalyst for me to go from who I was to where I was to who I could possibly become, and then join the Air National Guard. That's kind of, how scouting, and I still to this day, big supporter of scouting. I think it's important, especially for those areas like inner cities and those things where you can get these young now men and women and get them out and show them all these different things that they can do. They have the ability to do.
Yeah, well said.
It's kind of your turn to ask a question, but if I just comment real quick on service before self and the in my mind related concept of servant leadership. You know, it that was such a gift to you, I feel, because in a very strange way, my parents' relationship fell apart not long after they came to America as well. I was 15, 16 at about the time that their relationship fell apart from the pressures of immigration and moving around and stuff like that. But the thing that it's very odd to me, right? Because they moved to America to escape communism.
Right. Right.
But when they got here, they carried forward the ideas that they had about serving the state. So it took me, until the age of 31 to finally decide to join the military, because I had to get out of the mindset that they had, which is like, don't do anything for the state. The state is not to be trusted. Obviously, an experience that they brought with them from the communist old regime, but so I guess what I'm trying to say is I hear you on service before self, and it was a long road for me to divest myself of their ideas, which of course every child inherits their parents' good and bad ideas.
Especially since they came from a communist country where the state was not your friend. It was not looking out for its people, was not doing what was necessary to help the people grow and develop and live in life. It was the opposite. They would control the people, right? Controlling the people.
And oppress. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I that jumped right out at me. I took something away from that. So I'll be quiet because it's Rich's turn to ask questions.
Yeah, I guess I can ask a question. That was good. You had a good line of questioning and a good experience to share. So even though you may have not made Eagle Scout, it sounds to me like you really embraced a lot of those lessons, or they're instilled in you, and seem to contribute to your success in the military. Just your description of that is kind of vivid. If I may, it sounds like you're reminiscing and enjoying that a bit, telling us the story. And I think that contributed to your success. And we were talking about your advancement in the military, having some mentors who were kind of pushing you towards OTS or Academy of Military Science. And maybe we could pick up there a little bit, bring you back around to Barnes.
Let's talk a little bit about mentorship. It's critical in any organization that you have the ability to be a mentor or be a mentee, be mentored by someone else here. If you have that opportunity, take it. Take that opportunity if somebody offers that to you and says, hey, you should find a mentor, find somebody that will help you learn, grow, and develop in whatever career path you are, whatever profession you are, civilian or military here. Because we only grow through getting feedback, and growth happens through, change. We have to change our behavior, and from that, we usually grow and we become stronger, better, able to basically act as a citizen or as a member of our organization, member of our branch of service, that kind of stuff. So when it's done well, it is very, very impactful. And when people are in it for the right reasons, it's very, very impactful. It can have real benefits to the people that you're mentoring during the stage. So I benefited from mentors, positive mentors. And then, as we all go through organizations, you are observing your leaders, whether they're, corporate leaders or they're scout leaders or they're military leaders, and you pick up both their strengths and areas for improvement. You see somebody, because no one is perfect, okay? And you see someone, and leadership is a learned behavior, right? Leadership in particular is a learned behavior. You can study it, you can read about it, you can go to courses on it, but until you employ that, that's when you really see growth and wow, I now know what I need to do next time as a leader, or I know what not to do next time as a leader. And so, you look at your leaders and they're actually offering you an opportunity to learn, even though they've mentors, and you're saying, I want to emulate that. I want to decrease that. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. I don't think I want to do that here. So as you're kind of going through your career, you're picking that all up. And I always like to think of it, as you're putting like arrows in your quiver here, or, you're putting tools in your tool bag, and you might use those later on down the road here. So I think those that mentor others and serve others in that capacity are doing the heavy lifting that we need in this society.
Very good.
How many times in my life have I come across an individual who, like you say, may have been, let's call them an unofficial mentor, right? But I think tell me if you know what I'm talking about. You see somebody and they do a thing that you've never been proud of, but you do it a little and they do it a lot. But you see that behavior that you never liked in yourself magnified in them, and you just kind of like grab your head and you're like, man, I got to stop that. I got to stop that right now, because look what it could turn into. I'm 25 and he's 50, and he's doing it a lot. I'm doing it a little. Maybe you know what I'm talking about
Well, I
when you
do.
see that negative example.
Yeah. It's kind of back to that leadership is a learned behavior, and so very early as an NCO, as an airman, then an NCO, and then as a junior officer, and working my way all the way up to being a general officer. You're always assessing kind of how things are going with your senior leaders and your command, and you're saying, yeah, I want to do more of that. I'm going to try to figure out how to do more of that. I'm going to catch myself and try not to do that. I know it's in me, but I can control it. How I react to a situation, how I communicate, what I do overall, and that's the piece here that they always talk about. It's more art than science, right? You got to feel that you're doing this. It's not a mathematical equation where A plus B equals C in leadership. No, it's A plus Z plus H equals, Q. And maybe that's when you get the actual, results that you're looking for done here. And you got to be open to that. And then you have to be open to feedback from your leaders, and also from your peers, and also from those that work for you. Having the ability to have humility and be humble enough to say, I need to know how I'm doing, and I really do want to know how I'm doing here. And then having the environment that's been created, hopefully by the leader, because leaders create the climate around them, and that climate creates culture. And so, if people feel like I can tell the boss that, hey, maybe I disagree with that, and they don't lose, their job, they don't lose their head, they don't lose, you're not looking at them for anything other than thank you for that honest feedback, and I will consider that as I go forward here. So, that's the other side of mentorship, is that, people are giving you those skill sets, but you need to be open to saying, I want to know how I'm doing. Now, please tell me how I'm doing, whether you do that in an open forum, one-on-one, you do that through some type of 360 survey, but those are all things that can help you as a leader, be better at doing your job.
I agree. You definitely have to be open to that. And coincidentally, I just finished a 2-weekend training course online for scouting leaders. I had the opportunity to serve as course director for a national course, and it was hosted by the Western Massachusetts Council, and had our hot wash at the end. And we're all on Zoom in the Brady Bunch squares, and the national coordinator was there evaluating my first course. But I started off. I took control of it, and I asked all my staff, like, hey, what could I have done better to make your job easier? Went through everybody, including some folks. Locally, I recruited some folks. Nationally, she recruited. And I just turned to her at the end and said, hit me, tell me. And I identified my quirks. I kept a list through the whole 2-week period. And she says, well, we had some glitches. The learners didn't see it. Only us. She goes, basically, it was fantastic. And I'm like, that just made me feel good that the learners didn't see the glitches, because we have those everywhere. And not that we're hiding it or not being transparent. It's not relevant to their learning. It's important to get the product out, right? To get the materials they need to learn, they get the information they need to have. And somebody said to me, so it's interesting, you started off asking how you did. Everybody, I said, as you notice, I didn't critique anybody else.
Right.
Because it's all on me. If it didn't come off, it's all my fault. It's just, it is humbling, because you sit there and you hear some things.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's take some notes.
And all feedback's not accurate and or valid, right? Feedback has to be evaluated for, is it fair? Is it accurate? And you got to throw it up against the wall and you got to say, that one, okay, I used to say to some of my team members at times, hey, my job is to take the arrows. And so I'll take all the arrows and later on I'll turn around and I go, this one is this mine? Oh yeah, boss, you're the boss. You own that. I go, okay. Is this one? They go, oh, no, boss, we should have helped you with that one. That's not yours. This thing.
Right.
So, feedback, you got to look at it critically. You got to look at it honestly. And you got to be able to kind of be, thick-skinned enough and humble enough to be able to say, I own that, or I hear that, but I don't think that that's accurate. So I won't watch that, but I'm going to work on, because you can only work on a couple of things at a time. You can't have this whole palette of areas or issues and say, I'm going to work on all of them at the same time, because, guess what? You got to focus on the threes, right? The top three is probably where you're going to get the most impact, and then if you get those three kind of go in the right direction, then maybe you add one more, or maybe you add two more, and then you work on those, and then maybe new ones pop up, and then you rack and stack and prioritize again based on where these things are. But the genesis of that action is that you're listening and learning, and adapting as you go along.
Me, so you actually touched on it again just now, but you had said before Rich talked, you had said, you got to take feedback. And then just now you said, and you have to be pretty thick-skinned to take feedback. And I connected to that very strongly because I know in myself, it was a long time, two things. One, it took me a long time to be comfortable with taking negative feedback. But there were some areas of my life. I'll give you an example. So I was a power lifter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was all about working out. And so obviously there's technique there as well as your natural gifts, right? I was very comfortable listening to criticism about how I could improve my technique. I never had any sort of like negative feelings about you giving me, corrective feedback about how I'm pick deadlifting, right? Deadlifting has certain angles or whatever. But other pieces of my life, educational pieces while in college or perhaps at work or so on and so forth, I found that in those circumstances, it was much more difficult to accept critical feedback. And it took me a long time before it dawned on me like, aha, it's because you have an insecurity there. And that insecurity is preventing you from listening to this person tell you how you get better. So, and this is me speaking to myself, and you're not going to be able to hear that person telling you how to get better until you get over that insecurity. So I'm asking you like 2 or 3 questions. One is like, do you agree with that position? Do you feel that? Am I crazy? This is just me. And then the second question might be like, if you agree with that and you see it and you saw it in yourself when you were younger, how did you overcome? What techniques did you use to overcome the, let's say, anxiety about yourself or insecurity of your performance so that you can listen to negative feedback? And then the third one would be if you give some examples. So do you agree with that? How did you overcome examples?
So, what you bring up, Alex, is that we're humans, right? And that means that we're sensitive to what others think about us. I mean, it's great that we can think about, oh, I don't really care what anybody thinks, I'm rock solid, I'm stronger than everybody else. I don't really, but that actually is not true. We actually do care what our family thinks, our spouses thinks, our friends think. We think about what our bosses think, and we have a general desire to be liked, right? People want to be liked. Nobody wants to be disliked, right? And we actually don't really want to dislike others. We have that natural first level of like, let's just kind of find some commonality and let's have friends here. So when you get negative feedback, it goes right to the core of who we are. It's right in the heart. It's right in the soul. It's not processed by the brain. The brain is not engaged just yet on that. It's heart and soul stuff. Like, oh, he just told me that I did a terrible job on that presentation. And I'm just like, I put a lot of time and energy in that presentation. And I'm feeling crushed now, oh my God, everybody else must be thinking the same thing. Can I go back in the same room now? Can I work with the same group of people now? Suddenly you're going into that, spiral, that do loop, where like, oh no, I'm not good enough, and then suddenly, some people don't even come out of that, they just spiral all the way down. So it takes a little bit of, confidence and self-assurance to realize that what they're saying to me isn't personal. And if they do it in the right way, obviously we talked about good mentorship and good communications and mentoring people, then you go, all right, I'm okay. And if the climate is safe, where it's okay to fail. It's okay to say, okay, that didn't go well, try it again next time. Okay, that didn't go well, try it again next time. Then you learn from that. The first time that you have a culture or a climate that's basically when somebody fails is that you berate them, you treat them poorly, disrespectfully. Then that's it. Everyone and that person's shut down too. Never gonna stretch. Never gonna try to do anything new. Never gonna try to basically, really do what's right. They're gonna do what's safe. And that is what happens when you have a culture where I can't be myself. I can't go out there and do this because I'm afraid, that you're going to give me that negative feedback on this particular task that I was accomplishing. But now it's going to affect how you look at me for everything else, right? Instead of a one and done, like, hey, the presentation didn't go so well. Here's some things I think you should work on next time. Let's do a little bit better job. And then that's it. It's not carried over on your evaluation, your future opportunities for performance, for our promotions or something along those lines, right? But it comes back to us being human. It's hard for us to hear that we might be wrong. We might have done something incorrect here. And I guess it comes along with the more that you do it, the more that you experience that, and the more that you go through that with the right types of leaders giving the right types of feedback, then you get comfortable with it and you realize that it's not personal, it's professional in nature, and it should be delivered in a professional manner, and that they're really trying to sincerely help me become better, really trying to sincerely become better. So when scout masters, scout leaders are talking to their scouts about, hey, great attempt at building the fire, but here's a few things. Your starter was a little wet, and your sticks and twigs were a little bit too big, and so you've got to start real dry. Then you're going to build that. Then you've got to basically be able to kind of watch that fire grow. That's great stuff for them as they're thinking about, hey, I need to know how to start a fire because I'm out here now learning, wilderness experiences, and that's, I think, what's important is that, it's the delivery, it's the intent of the delivery, it's that leader understanding that they are delivering a less than positive message, but they're doing it in the most professional way, and they're really only focusing on the task that was performed, not the person. The person is not the focus of that discussion. Does that help?
Oh yeah, I mean, you spoke to all of it, and you kind of talked about how. So you talked about how it's incumbent upon the mentor to set a tone that allows the mentee to receive that feedback in a non-personal attack kind of way. So yeah, for sure. And you also kind of talked about how you need to realize you have to own your process, and you need to realize that if you get good advice, even if it's negative, right? And you talked earlier about vetting it and making sure that it is in fact good advice. So take that as a done thing. It's good advice. You gotta absorb it, And if you find this is not something you said. This is something I'm adding. If you find, like I did, that you're having a tough time absorbing it, then the lesson there is that there's something going on inside of you that you need to work on so that you can be open to absorbing the good criticism,
Yeah. Well, and then just in general, right? Because again, we're human. We have hearts and souls. This is all being processed not by the brain at that time, but by the heart. It's emotional when somebody gives you negative feedback. When they give you positive feedback, right? You're elated. You're like, oh, I'm hearing all this stuff, and you're feeling great about that. And the brain's saying, hey, good job, excellent, outstanding. When you're hearing the negative, the brain's like, oh, you're a loser. You're totally, I can't believe you didn't do that. You know, and it gets it's so back to where that person who's giving you that feedback, they understand what their role is. Their role is to build you up, not tear you down. Their role is to basically make sure that you understand that you are important to them, and that what they're giving you is for your future development and growth, right? And a lot of times what happens is, you know, if you get back to communication psychology, right? You have the sender and the receiver, right? And so what you really want to be able to do is that you want to make sure that there's enough space, enough time in between the message being sent and the message being received that you have a chance to process that. Because we have this internal mechanism that likes us to say, I'm waiting for you to stop talking so I can ask you another question or tell you what I want to tell you. And it's just inherent in all of us, right? You're just like, okay, in a minute they're going to stop talking and I'm going to tell them what they need to know, right? And so you're not actively listening right now. You're not in the moment. So you're missing things and you're just waiting for that person to stop. But if you take the time to pause, focus on what the person's telling you, digest the information, allow yourself to be able to process that a little bit, and then follow up with the response. That skill set, that ability to pause and give yourself more space is critical to that better dynamic, that better relationship here going forward. When you're in that mentoring relationship, or even in any other interpersonal situation, you know, pause, think, and respond. Versus, I have my script running. I'm ready to go. Just as soon as your lips stop moving, I'm going to tell you what I think.
Good points. And something I tried to do, Alex has witnessed this a few times, because I'm like a sensitive person. So, right, I'll take something, I tend to maybe read into things. Sometimes I have to step back, analyze it. I do that too much too. But with some of the folks that worked with me, everyone has value. You've heard me say that. Everyone brings something to the team, and you've got to kind of figure out what that is and capitalize on it. Use their strengths, the good of the order. When something goes wrong, you're still people of value. And I made it a strong effort to separate behaviors from people. And meaning that I'm not saying I'm upset with you with what you did, but you did this. I'd be more like, as you said, give a good effort. I don't like the way you did that. Here's a way I think you could better handle that to not alienate people or get the message out clearer or whatnot. Tried to, I say, attack the behavior, not the person, and try to take it that way because everyone still has value here. We all make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the most difficult thing we have in any organization is people working with people, interpersonal skills. It's mostly about how people aren't able to work with people. That is the major issue in organizations. You know, I spent some time in corporate America. I was an HR director. Was basically at the very senior levels at Cigna when I was there, and you know, almost exclusively the things that I got involved with were interpersonal issues. It wasn't about the workload. It was about how people were failing to accept each other, work with each other, you know, not imprint their values on others and expect them to be who they are. You know, all those things we'd have to navigate through, you know, the psychological. It wasn't about, you know, Jill or Bob, you know, you're not doing the right job. No, Bill and Bob, you could be doing the right job. And so, but it's that you're not helping form a cohesive team. You know, you're taking away from the success of the organization because we're spending a lot of time trying to find out why you can't seem to get along in workplace. And so again, you know, it's more important to think about those interpersonal skills, you know, investing in people through that way than it is about the actual sometimes tasks. Tasks are important. We're here to get things done. You know, the military, we're here to get things done. In scouting, when you go out there, when I was a scout and we went out up to Warnoco and it was the Klondike Derby and they said, okay, here's the deal. You need to build a sled that's going to be able to take all your stuff from here to the next waypoint over there. And the sled has to stay together here. You know, you had to figure the task was we need to build a sled, what we have available here to get from point A to point B. And so if we were all in harmony and we were all, you know, great with each other, but we failed the task to build the sled, then it was no good. If we built the sled, but then we ended up, you know, quote unquote leaving the body behind, right? And we didn't bring everybody along. One or two people took over, everybody else was sitting on the side. Was that really the right objective at that stage? And the answer would have been no, right? We're all supposed to be learning how to be able to do that here. So, it's understanding that we have to balance as enters, as explorers, as scout leaders, the task and relationship situation here. So there's sometimes to be high task and you got to get things done, right? In a case of emergency, you don't ask everybody, I think there's a fire and maybe we all should talk about whether we should leave or not. No, it's fire, get out, right? That's not the time to worry about that other stuff. But maybe
set up a tiger team.
Right, it's not time to set up a tiger team. Let's discuss whether we should leave
to the stairs or we jump off the side.
But there are other things. If the task isn't immediate and that you do have the time to spend time to develop the people that are there, develop what is the issue, explain it, make sure everybody has a firm understanding what that is, and that they buy into and contribute to the potential output that you're looking for the success of that organization. And leaders get in trouble sometimes when they end up not realizing what side of that dichotomy that they should be on in regards to driving the organization forward. If you're all high task and no relationship, no one is feeling connected to you. No one's feeling connected to the mission. No one's feeling connected to the team. And although you may achieve some of the objectives, you didn't bring the people along with you. And maybe actually some of them are actually actively working against you at this point because they have bought in. If you're all relationship, like, okay, everybody, no matter what happens, it's okay if we fail, it's us. And you're like, well, wait a minute. No, we have to achieve this. We have to achieve this goal. We have to make sure that gets done. So I'm sorry now, but I need Bob, Sue, and Jim to basically start to contribute here because I notice you guys are all sitting on the sideline, sitting on your hands, and I think you have things that you can amp you up to this conversation. Let's get involved right now.
Right.
So you need to be more directive. Let's get on task here, back and forth, trying to figure out what that is. And again, art versus science, right? There's no book, no course that you're going to be able to take and go, that's the answer. I open up page 64, do this. It just doesn't exist.
I checked my phone earlier, not because I'm a rude person who can't keep his phone to the side during other people's conversations, but because I just heard a podcast with a woman named Michelle Fowler, and I'm terrible with names, so I went to check her name so I could give her credit. But she worked for NASA for a while. She's a physicist, and during the podcast, she said many, many interesting things, and this was one of them. She claimed that at NASA, when a team was built, and you touched on team dynamics and you did a little bit as well, but when a team is built to handle whatever problem, like you guys are working air conditioning on this shuttle, the team consists of, 10 people, doesn't matter what the number is. She said, look, by the nature of human beings, some of the members of the team will be higher performing and some will be lower performing. And those roles will shift depending on what the problem is. Some will be ready to contribute immediately, and some need time to contribute to whatever the problem you're working on. Yeah. But she stated that NASA has a policy that the team leader must seek the input of every individual on the team. This goes to your Jill and Jim and Sue who were sitting on the sideline. But I thought that was so cool, right? Because, yeah. How many groups have I been a part of where you have somebody who's like talking all the time, they want to present the thing, they want to do this, and then somebody who's just a real wallflower, and if you take the time to ask the wallflower what they think, sometimes you get these great ideas, but they didn't want to share them with you because they felt like, maybe I have no value. Look at the loudmouth guys, and just to be clear, the loudmouth guy isn't always me, okay? I know that.
Sometimes it's me.
Yeah, sometimes it's you. Yeah. But, if you ask the wallflower, and so NASA implemented this as a systemic process to ask the wallflowers and the loudmouths for their investment in the issue. I thought that was great, and I thought it touched on what you just said.
So, I love that because it gets back into psychology again, right? So you have extroversion and introversion as a dynamic there, two different sides. So some people are more prone to be extroverts, right? And extroverts get energy by the things around them. the people around them, the energy, the dynamics in the room. That's how they get the energy, and they thrive on that energy. And they tend to be the people that might want to be speaking more and talking more and presenting more ideas. Then you have those that are more introverted or introversion here. They get energy from themselves, right? They get energy by stepping back and processing and thinking about that thing, whatever the issue might be that they're trying to solve here, and they will come up with just as good, probably sometimes better than some of the people that are out there doing the extroverting. And to your point with NASA in that policy that they implemented is trying to make sure that those people aren't discounted in the room, that the loudest person or the person who speaks most in the room isn't the only person who speaks, and they want to make sure that every other person gets that input at that stage. And so that's a very smart approach for NASA, but it's also very smart for leaders to be thinking about, is that know your people, know how your people, know their personality, know them well enough to know that, Jill is going to, or Bob is going to walk away. Bob tends to be more quiet, he's more introverted, but he really understands what we're doing in this organization, and he has a sense of it. I might want to approach him afterwards and ask him, Bob, I really want to know what you thought about that discussion here, and in a one-on-one situation, Bob might be able to say, here's everything I thought about, but he's still processing in the moment right there and needs time to be able to kind of put that together before he would or she would come out and be able to say that in a public forum here. So know your people, understand what they bring to the organization. What I really liked, Alex, about what you said there was that depending on what the task is that you're trying to solve, the group experience and dynamics in there might shift. So these three people might be the people that on this particular task are going to be the leaders leading the team, and everybody else has a role to play. But if it shifts to another, aspect of what we're trying to work on here, or another specialty or something, then suddenly they take a secondary, and now these two are the ones that need to come forward. And kind of knowing that of your people, knowing about that about you, and then creating the environment where that's okay to do. It's okay right now because this isn't your forte. You're going to sit over here for a little bit, but you're going to contribute. But now we're in your area. We're in a software area. We're talking about software, your hardware, your software. You take the lead. Right.
Know your people, know the resources of your people.
Know the resources. Make sure you're gathering all that input and you're not leaving anything behind because somebody's still having the time to process all that and may come back to you later on. May need to put that in an email to you as they gather their thoughts and send that to you, versus just verbalizing it in the meeting.
Something you said in that answer, I really relate to, I really like. Besides knowing your people, but the examples of Bob's normally an introvert. He goes back, he digests, he thinks about it, comes up with an idea, and he might send you an email or talk to you privately. Something I didn't like, and I'm going to bash your current employer, my former employee, worked for DOD.
I may have to accuse myself.
Yeah, you're a union guy. It's okay. You can listen. But I found this very difficult. Lots of times when you have, an admiral or general coming to, was the commander of the organization coming to visit for a brief, and they'd have some hot contract or something, and they'd go, hey, bad example, but Alex, you're the contracting officer. You need to brief the general. Alex would have no problem with that. Some of the people we worked with, very shy, had not had an experience, not been in the military perhaps, fairly new to the government, and would really have a struggle. They do these dry runs, and these things were brutal. They were going through the slides, rehearsals for a few hours a day before the general, the admiral would show up. I just never liked that. I just thought somebody really, it's good to get out of your comfort zone, but I think that has to be something the employer, the individual, sort of wants to do or wants to be brought along, not just thrust in there, because I think you do more damage to the future. Your thoughts on something like that?
So that's an interesting scenario that you just teed up here. So thoughts on that. So again, knowing your people, and you could say, okay, so say Bob is the one that you want to present the information to the senior executive, but Bob isn't really good speaking in front of groups, but this is a developmental opportunity for him. And so you really want him to try. And so again, culture and climate being critical here, right? it should be a safe environment. He feels like, hey, I can go out there and give it my best, and I'm not going to be ridiculed, or it's not going to be held against me because, I may not be the best speaker on my feet, or I'm not the best presenter with the materials here. So that's kind of in the development range, right? So that can be one plausible reason why you'd want to have somebody be able to do that. It's within their core responsibilities to be able to do that. They're the contracting officer. They got to go out and they got to do that. But another approach might be, well, Bob is not comfortable doing that, but Bob is an awesome person who can take all that data, put it into a presentation, do all the slides, all the backup slides. But Bob's not the guy that you want standing up. So, but Bob and Jill work together, and they know what this process, they know what's going on here, and Jill is good at that. And so now they form a team. And so Jill gets up there and Jill says, "Hi, I'm here. Bob and I have prepared this presentation for you. I'm going to present today, and if you have any questions afterward, Bob and I will be more than happy to be able to address those general or senior executive DoD, that kind of stuff there."
Right.
Again, why would you deliberately put somebody in a difficult situation unless it was really important that is part of their core?
And of course, briefing a senior executive or a senior official is important. Then again, I think my perception, the way it was being handled from my viewpoint, it was just this drill, do it. And some people were really nervous with that. And I think your example, it hits the nail on the head for me. Have a teaming approach. You have one of your lieutenants or deputies are doing a good job, and you let Bob know, hey, you might get some direct questions from the general or his entourage, and be prepared. You're the subject matter expert, be able to answer those, and I'm sure he can handle that.
Right. If he's the one that knows all the data, put all the data together, then now a direct question comes to him, and he will give a direct answer at that stage. But he's not up there trying to go through the slides and have his timing down and be able to, work the room and make sure that he's looking at all that stuff. And maybe, Jill is the right person to be able to do that. And then he sees that scenario and he gets more comfortable. And maybe now in the future, he'll say, you know what, let me try the next one. I'll try the next one here. So again, it goes back to knowing what your people bring to the table. As a leader, you have to know your people. You have to know what skill sets they bring to the table. You have to make sure that you're providing them with opportunities to grow and develop. Also, those are challenges at this stage. You have to give them honest and accurate feedback. You should provide good mentoring opportunities here at that stage. And if all those things are going in the right direction, that's how you as a leader are creating the climate that creates the culture that allows people to feel like they're all successful. I just left Barnes over there, and I got to tell you that I'm having some emotions today. I really am. I'm having some real emotions today. It was so good to be back amongst the Art Stompers over there, the ones that I've known for decades, the ones that I just met, walking through the shops in the maintenance, because I know we've got that background, walking through the maintenance shops. It's an electric, there's a buzz in the air. They're excited about this new jet. They're excited about getting hands on this new jet. They're excited that the 104th Fighter Wing is going to be flying the premier fighter in the United States Air Force, and that they're going to have the ability to basically write a new chapter in our history out there. And the reason why it's a little emotional for me is that I'm feeling like my time has come and gone, and I'm part of them, obviously, and I'm Barnstormer for life, but I really want to be there. I really want to be there. I said, is there any way I can kind of go back in time a little bit and start, and now kind of start over and do that again? Because I look at that and I say, man, I miss that. I miss that feeling of being part of something, bigger than yourself, part of a team that is totally focused on their mission, that the leadership there is doing all the right things. They're taking care of the people. They're creating the right climate, creating the right culture. Colonel Glass just unveiled the latest vision and mission statement for them, and the new model that all aligns things together for them, gives them a due north compass point for them to be able to basically shoot for at this stage. And it makes my heart feel good that they're going to be highly successful and as they go forward. But I do look at kind of like I'm on the outside, going, God bless you. I salute you. Carry on. Your time is now and my time was then.
Yeah. You get to miss that, right? It's just, I find that's the only thing, the people and the mission.
Oh,
I've
absolutely.
immersed myself into the scouting world, which has an important mission as well, and I really jumped into that, and that keeps me occupied with a purpose, doing something good in the community in that sense. So you had a varied career, starting as an airman, becoming a brigadier general. That's awesome. Multitude of positions along the way. I started my career in the Army Guard with Franklin Street, Westfield,
Yep.
before I got
Down
smart.
in Westfield,
Before I got
yep.
smart, came over air, right? And as we say, and I had a good friend in the Army Guard, Randy, who he chose our theme music inadvertently. And Randy had once said, "You have the best rank in the military." I'm like, "What's that?" He goes, "E5. You're halfway up the enlisted chain. You still take orders. You're high enough to give them. You don't have to deal with a lot of the other stuff." So my question's kind of multi-part to you. So as a former E5, did you at some time in your life, perhaps at I think you went to McGee Tyson for your commissioning?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah,
at
Academy of
AMS,
yes, absolutely.
as your first squadron command, maybe as a full colonel, was there a point when you said to yourself, you don't have to admit this if you don't want, "Damn, I wish I was a staff sergeant again"? Yeah.
So it kind of gets back to a little bit what I told you before. I had good mentors. My goal was to work my way up to be a chief of security police at the time, and then of course he said, "I think you can do more." So I got so a little step back there. So I started applying for officer positions, and the first position that came up was an intel officer position, and I thought, well, I'm a security police guy. Intel, that's kind of close to anything. I can do that. Well, it came down to me and one other person, and his name was Pete Payson. So um, Pete got the job, and I'm like, okay, well, and Pete turned out to be a career Intel officer and a great guy.
Very good.
And so I said, oh, all right. So first swing at the bat, didn't go so well. So I think it was 6 months or maybe a year later, that another position came up. And this one was an A-10 maintenance officer position. And I said, this is perfect. I want to get into maintenance here. I almost went into maintenance as an enlisted person. I said, this is great. So it came up. I applied for it. I got it. I got the job. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm going through all the process to get ready, go off to the Academy of Military Science. And then there was a reorders. And I remember that the group commander came in and said to me, Pete, hey, I need to tell you some bad news. I go, what's up, sir? And he goes, there's been a reorg. We basically lost some positions. We lost an officer position, and unfortunately, the position that we were going to put you in has been cut. So we got to move some of the more senior officers at that point back down into this position. So I said, strike two. All right, so strike two. Okay, and then I said, well, all right, I'm still doing the cop thing. I'm still out there full time. I've got my bachelor's degree. Life is still good. And so time went by. Again, I think it was maybe 6 months or so, or maybe a little longer. And two jobs popped up. Was the education and training officer in the MPF at the time, or the SIBO at the time, and then it was the services flight commander position that opened up. And I boarded for both. And so I'm waiting to hear. And then the support group commander, Colonel Bob Duda, came into me and said, you got both. Which one do you want? And I said, wow. And so I had to think about it for a little bit. And I said, it became very clear. I said, I'm going to take the flight commander's job.
Yes.
So I took the services flight commander. It was a small flight. I think we were 32 people. Services was responsible for food service, billeting, mortuary affairs, our prime rib readiness,
Laundry, fitness, and some other things.
yeah,
right?
all of those things back in the day. And lo and behold, I said, okay. So I went off to academy, came back. Within 6 months, we were supposed to have a UEI. And this unit had been rated marginal in the past. And now here we coming up. I'm a brand new lieutenant coming into a brand new unit, literally a green lieutenant, and said to my senior NCO at the time, I need to understand where we're at right now. And unfortunately, it wasn't where it needed to be. And I said, well, we are not going to get another. We're not going to get another marginal. So we work like heck. And then I found by calling around within the National Guard Bureau, one of the great things about the Guard in particular, I'm sure it's this way in the Reserve, but in the Guard in particular, is that it's a small community. And I called the Bureau and I talked to our function with the Bureau and I said, I need to know who has the best services flight in the Air National Guard. And they said, Lincoln, Nebraska. I said, Lincoln, Nebraska. He goes, go to Lincoln, Nebraska. So I found out who that commander was out there. I found out who the readiness NCO was out there. And I convinced my boss to let me go out there for 2 weeks. I went out there for 2 weeks, and I shadowed them. I absorbed everything. I read it. They were outstanding. They provided all kinds of details. I took everything, came back, said to my team, all right, we got 4 months to go. And we methodically started putting into place the programs and that we needed to have to be able to do that. UAI comes and goes. We end up getting a satisfactory. And I'm like, you know what? That is a good result with the time
That's a win.
that we had. That's a win. We'll take the win and we'll go forward from that. One of the things that in hindsight that I am very appreciative now, and that I didn't know it then, but I do know it now, is that as a second lieutenant commander, I sat at the table with all the other commanders of the wing, of the group at the time. And so back then, your group commander was an 06. The vice commander was, I believe, still an, I want to say an 05. It could have been an 06. It's been so long. But then everybody else was kind of either a major, captain, lieutenant colonel, And so at the big table, the big conference table, were all of these, mid-level company grade officers or field grade officers, and then second lieutenant green sitting at the end of the table. And we all had the same responsibilities. We all had units that we were accountable for. We all had to manage our resources and our training and our people and our manpower. And yeah, the scales were different from the big squadrons to the small flights. But that experience, going back to mentorship and going back to watching your leaders, I was able to kind of watch those leaders and learn from those leaders in that room. There were only, I think at that time, maybe 8 or 10 total, not including the group, the wing commander and the vice commander. And they became my senior mentors. They became, and when I saw them do something well, I wanted to emulate that. When I saw them not do something well, I said, okay, wow, I don't want to do that. And that started a career for me, whether by desire or design or not, but I literally moved throughout most of my career from command to command to command to command to command throughout my career. So as I look back, I had 8 unit commands and 2 combat commands in my career. And then I had my time as the director of staff or chief of staff at the headquarters, which is basically a staff officer position, and as the vice commander of the wing, which is basically a staff officer position. And then as my role as the ATAG, which is another staff officer. So the majority of my officer career was leading people, leading teams, and moving organizations forward to basically complete the overall mission. And that shaped me. All those experiences shaped me. It shaped my leadership style. And so I still, even when I was back and forth between full-time and part-time, as we can do in the Guard, when I was working in corporate America, I was working at Cigna, my bosses would say, Pete, is that a military thing that you just were doing there? And I said, I got lots of tools in my tool bag. You never know kind of where I'm pulling that experience out, where I'm pulling that process out. And the same thing in the corporate side, on the military side. Somebody was like, we did a lot of strategic planning. We did a lot of 360s. We did a lot of plans and processes when I was a commander in different units here. And they'd say, is that a corporate thing? I go, yeah, of course. I mean, I'm going to bring whatever tool I can to the table to make our organization better.
I think you, just from my perspective as an NCO, not having been a commander or commissioned officer, what I took from that, 2 choices. You get both jobs, education training officer or services commander. I think you chose wisely. I had a friend who was my ops officer in the logistics squadron at 3rd. His career is a major. His career had just been staff support positions. And he says, can I talk to you? I'm like, sure. I was a senior at the time. Yes. He's kind of depressed. I'm like, what's the matter? He goes, I just found out I'm going to be services commander. So services flight a little bit bigger by this time. I said, congratulations. He goes, well, no, it's services. And he was a maintenance guy, a logistics guy. I'm like, you're in the club now. You're in the club. You have command. So you got a top-notch E8 running things. All you got to do is take care of her and your people. Do whatever you're supposed to do as the boss. You're going to learn that. She's going to help you along. You're going to be fine. It's a great section. I see the guy out there. I don't know if he did this, but he got a little hope. He had some holster belts on at the holiday meal, and he's got 2 cans of whipped cream in the holsters. He's fired up at the pumpkin pie, getting into the fun. And I run into him, a few months or a couple years later. He was XO for the wing. So, same thing. He moved up, and that's, you're on the team. And just as you said, you're the junior commander, but you had all these other folks as your peers as a commander, but also your mentors, well, experience to pass on and share with you. And I think that was critical in your development from my perspective.
I knew all of the movers and shakers in the wing because they were all the commanders in the wing. And so I was very visible and very accountable as a second lieutenant. So, I had to get things, like I said, I had to get as much done as they got done. The scale was either smaller or bigger. And then as I moved through different units here, and, you get opportunities in the military. And so would services be the first choice if I had a whole bunch of option? Probably not, until, was something I wanted to go into. Maintenance was something I wanted to be into. Security forces was something I was already into, at that stage. I remember when I showed up at mortuary affairs school, we had to go through all of those things. We had to go to a funeral home. We had to see but you're responsible for all that. You're responsible for being the mortuary affairs officer on the base. And so I thought to myself, okay, this isn't what I thought was going to be my first officer job, but I need to do it well. And so you just do it. And then I think that is why I had the continuous opportunities. My mentors, my senior leaders were like, if it needs to be improved, needs to be, reshaped, redone, then, Lieutenant Green, Captain Green, Major Green, Colonel Green is going to be the one that we're going to move into that organization to help bring it back to where it needs to be. And I spent a lot of my career in doing just that, bringing the organizations, those that weren't performing well, to perform well. Those that were performing well is to perform better.
What a great place to really practice leadership as a junior officer in command of a small unit. The fundamentals are the same, I imagine. Like running a small business, if you run that successfully, you move up to mid-size, up to a large business. Those CEO skills transcend businesses and organizations.
Yeah, the skill sets are the same. The scale is different.
Right.
So you have more people or less people. You have more responsibility functionally for contributing to mission or less. In a fighter wing, right? The first and foremost is that without pilots, we have no mission, right? Mm-hmm. And then without airplanes, we have nothing for the pilots to be able to do. And that tooth to tail scenario, with the typical fighter, that there's a tooth and tail. The tail is about somewhere, I think I remember reading, anywhere from 14 to 24 people. And that includes everything that needs to be done to make sure that that pilot, that aircraft, the training, the meals, the uniforms, the logistics, the gas, the supplies, the parts, the security. I mean, there's no one person in that tail that you can do without for very long before the system breaks down. So everyone is important. Colonel Glass was just saying the same thing up there. It was so nice to hear him say that, is that, everyone in this organization has a role to play to make our conversion to the F-35 and now our new mission in the F-35 successful. And I couldn't agree with him more, people.
That is awesome. I shared a story with Peter and Alex down in the booth, the truck beforehand. I had was working at DC.
Are you still getting that feedback?
A little bit.
A little bit. You're
Yeah.
talking so softly.
Oh, am I? I'd sound very loud in my head. So.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah. So I was at DCMA. We were working leadership forums during the pandemic, and I was able to get General Ginger Gaglio to join us via Zoom.
Yep.
She gave us a briefing. She'd given the state retired list a few weeks before about the F-35.
Right.
And people really enjoyed hearing that. She says, it's not released yet to the public, but it is approved, and your DoD employees, and we're going to find out in 7-8 days. Don't worry about it. I want to share it with you. And one of our colleagues was saying, Barnes is getting F-35. And I said, just heard the general tell you that. And he goes, well, I said, well, how long have you been in the military? He goes, I was never in the military. I'm like, exactly. I have served under her. She's not blowing smoke. It's coming. It's a good thing. And I just always enjoyed that because we know the character. He's a good guy, but it's just fun to bust his chops a little bit.
It's maybe a little negative Nancy-ish, but
but he's a good guy.
person,
He's
you know?
just kind of fun to he sets himself up. And speaking of setups, I'm going to set Alex up for a question he mentioned to you previously, but I'll lead in with, you mentioned you're an aviation buff. You like airplanes. You like to be around airplanes. Alex keeps craning his neck watching some of the aircraft as we're chatting, and I'm trying not to. I'm trying to be focused on the camera and the microphone. But
I geeked out a little bit on that old plane with the radial engine that just took off a little while ago, because it's been so long since I saw. The biplane, the yellow one, because it's been so long since I saw a radial engine in action. You know, like nobody uses them anymore
have
much.
A very distinctive sound.
Yes,
it's a beautiful sound. Actually.
Yes,
it's a beautiful sound.
A little Harley-like.
Yeah,
it's got a little
there you go
to it. Yeah, you bet.
So your favorite aircraft? It could be one that with the unit here, or it could be a civilian aircraft or anything. Just curious.
Put me on the spot, huh?
Yeah, well, I know you.
Aircraft.
I know there's some you probably really enjoyed.
Well, shoo, man. Well, there are so many that I really enjoy. Reading about, knowing about, and having the privilege of being part of it at this stage. But in my office is a big litho of a P-51 Mustang.
Nice airplane.
And I love the P-51 for a lot of reasons. It's sleek, its engine sounds awesome, it's maneuverable, it's just a beautiful looking aircraft, right? But more importantly, the P-51 was pivotal for us basically winning the war in World War II in Europe, and particularly with the Nazis here. Up to that point, they were using the P-47s to escort bombers over the canal, into Germany. And the P-47 did not have the maneuverability, it did not have the ability to have the distance at that stage. And there is a book, and I can't remember what it is, but I read it and it was great. It was the history of the developer of the P-51. And while we're fighting the war, and the P-47 is the major fighter that we have here, and bombers are getting shot down all over the place because we're leaving them unescorted across the channel. At some point, they peeled off
because the range on the 47,
again. And then the Luftwaffe was basically just having a field day with our bombers and our bomber crews out there. And so he was fighting in the halls of the Pentagon, and with the at the time, the Air Force was remember, the Air Force emerged onto the Army Air Corps, and what happened was about the bomber. The bomber was the definitive Air Force platform. Fighters were a unique little fun thing, but that wasn't what it was. And he was trying to bring the P-51 to the table to say, this aircraft can help solve our problems that we have right now in the Air Force, this maneuverable fighter. And what he had to go through was really disheartening, as you're reading about it. I mean, he was getting all the typical bureaucratic responses. No. So he fought for years to be able to do that. And finally, he gets through. And the Air Force, Army Air Corps, the Air Force figures out that we need to start producing the P-51. But then again, they still tried to basically say, well, we're not going to do a lot of them. We're only going to do a few of them, right? When we needed to be producing these things in mass quantities.
Yeah.
And he has to fight through that. So he got an answer. He finally got it. Yeah, we're going to do it, but we're not going to do a lot of them. Finally gets through all that.
There it goes now, sir.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, the biplane.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah, that's
great.
That's classic.
That's awesome.
It's got a very distinctive sort of like push rod kind of sound to all those cylinders. But anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
And it's pretty.
And it is pretty.
So they finally get through all that bureaucratic nonsense, and they finally make a full commitment to producing the P-51, and they start putting it into the theater here. And you can go back and take a look at history, and it becomes the dominant fighter. I mean, it decimates the Luftwaffe. And it gives us the edge now because now we're escorting our bombers all the way over there, and we're providing top cover, and we're fighting and shooting down all of their aircraft at this stage. And we're saving a lot of crews and whatnot. So I just love the P-51 story. It was pivotal. Without it, I think we would have lost the war. Remember, the Luftwaffe and the Nazis were now just getting ready to put the jet MiGs into play here. And we ended up decimating to the point where even though they were bringing those online, they couldn't manufacture and employ them fast enough to make a difference. So they essentially never really got into the war. So P-51 Mustang.
Critical hero of the war.
So you have to say your favorite jet, and I have to say my favorite jet too. We can't just throw them that
Favorite jet or
grenade.
favorite prop.
Favorite plane, whatever you want.
I have some favorites, and one of them ties into family. I've had people that were around aviation for some reason in the military, and had an uncle was in Naval Air Forces World War II, and he was a plane captain in the Navy. It's a crew chief in the Air Force, and it was a PBY Catalina.
Okay.
Yeah, I flew in the South Pacific with that. I think that's a really cool airplane. And then, I gotta throw this out there. The one time I was working at the Pentagon at the Bureau in contracts, and I got dragged over to the Pentagon proper to sit in a part task trainer for an F-16, and I got to fly an F-16, essentially fly an F-16. The captain that was overseeing that said, if you had a logbook, I could have signed you off. I'm like, contracting guy, I don't have a logbook. And actually landed it, which was a cool thing.
Nice.
I landed, and if you've played around with any of those in your career, I'm sure you have. And I love the 16. I like the movies. People are doing this with a stick.
Oh.
In the movies, and the captain told me, so, and the stick was on the side, I believe, in the 16. And he says, you're just going to flick your wrist slightly, ever so slightly, to make rolls and moves and things. So it's tough. Kudos to people that fly for a living, for real. We bust their chops sometimes, but what a skill set they need to perform. And I almost crashed and burned a couple of times, but did land. He said you would have walked away. So F-16 is kind of fun.
Me?
Besides the C5, you worked.
Well,
I mean the C5. Yeah, I'm a crew. I was a crew chief on the C5, so I may be tempted to answer C5, and it is impressive in a whole series of ways.
very impressive.
I recently learned that Boeing competed against McDonnell Douglas with the 747, and that's why the 747 has that distinct roof or the space.
I wasn't aware of that. It's interesting.
Because it was designed to have a visor that lifted up, and so you needed to have the cockpit
High
above.
enough so that when it came up.
That's right. So they lost that. So they introduced the 747 with the research that they did on the military side, but it still has that distinctive shape.
That bulbous shape.
That bulbous shape.
The extra deck up there.
Exactly. And later it became a luxury feature.
Right.
It was a pretty neat fact. So C5. Of course, I'm tempted to say that. I'm tempted to say F-15 because I think that jet
A great jet.
is very handsome, and I'm sure that Top Gun has something to do with the way I look at it and stuff like that. But my particular favorite aircraft is the A-10.
Another aircraft that I have a lot of affinity for, and probably will get some crap because I didn't pick the A-10 or the F-15 from the audience at that. Say, what do you mean you were an A-10 maintenance commander and you were the
Oh, you love them all the same. They're really they're all.
But I mean,
you have a favorite.
if I have to be honest, I had to go with my answer.
Of course. And we don't look at our comments, so it doesn't matter what they say.
Well, actually, depending if we get more than 5 viewers, that might.
Yeah. Well, I think we have 6 now.
Pretty sure
But,
General Rice will be watching this. Yeah.
What? Yeah. General Rice will watch.
Send me something.
Yeah, us too.
I like the A-10 for a whole lot of reasons. I like the survivability, but my favorite thing about I like the way it looks. My favorite thing about it is that during Desert Storm, it taught us this very important lesson that sometimes the highest tech weapon is not the right tool for the job. It's a very similar lesson to what we learned with the M16 in Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
The Kalashnikov, the AK-47, was a better weapon for that muddy.
Right.
Well, the jamming, the tolerances allowed for mud to get into it, whereas the 15 didn't, right? And that's a lesson. The our weapon was probably the better weapon, and it was certainly the more accurate weapon. AK is supposed to be. I've never personally fired
In optimal conditions, our weapon is better.
in optimal condition, right?
Back then.
Right, because we have 800 meter single target, or what was it, 400 meter single target, 800 meter group target. So our weapon is more accurate. It's lighter. The rounds, you can carry more of them, right? The 223 is just a better combat round. So all those, and it's the same thing with the A10, right? We learned that the stealth fighter and maybe some other. Perhaps the 14 with its intake right underneath near the ground, right? It was ingesting desert sand. It was causing problems. The A10 soldiered on, right? It has the firepower. It has the lift capacity. It has the survivability. I've heard gee-whiz information that it can fly with half a missing wing and half an engine, or one of the engines down.
Extremely durable.
Very durable.
Combat survival is very high for an aircraft. But it was designed to do that.
Right.
It was designed to basically take ground fire and be able to survive. Right. The way that the cockpit is basically surrounded. Pilot's surrounded in titanium. All the fuel cells are self-sealing. You can fly on hydraulics at this stage. It has the ability to keep going here. The T-134 engines are super durable. The cowlings help protect the engines there. I mean, you've seen the pictures in Desert Storm where I think it was Casey Campbell.
Casey Campbell.
Yeah, she threw her A-10 back and the thing was shot to heck, right? And that's what it was designed to do. It was designed to be, flying tank is what, sometimes people affectionately call it, a flying tank, or maybe not affectionately call it a flying tank, but great aircraft.
Yeah.
Great.
Favorite aircraft of soldiers and Marines.
Absolutely. Even to this day, I have a friend of mine who was texting me and he goes, because now they're employed in the A-10 right now we're in Iran, in the Strait of Hormuz. And he goes, what do you think about the A-10 being over there? I go, when we were in the A-10 business, we had a mission set where there was a Marine, mission set where our guys would go out and they would basically train against boats. I mean, if you think about it, it's a perfect opportunity to train against boats. It has basically, it has missiles, it has bombs. It had basically 2 rockets that it could have on it.
Can it also carry a torpedo that can be sea launched from its belly?
I don't know that. I'm not aware of that. But
because it's got such a low stall speed that you figure it could drop a torpedo at those lower speeds.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not aware of that. But I mean, with the
looks like he just bought another 40 years for the A-10.
The A-10 was designed around the gun, around the GAU-8, and then the Army, the story was the Army said, oh, that's great. Can you put more, weapons pylons on? And they said, well, okay, well, how many more? As many as you can. And next thing you know, it turned into what it has, right?
Yeah.
At this stage. So, with the Maverick missiles, very good. And so, yeah, it is a great platform for small speedboats or those type of things that are threats out there in the Strait right now, or doing what it was designed to do, which is provide forward area of the battle, protection of those folks that are on the ground right now. Your infantry units, your special ops folks, those kind of folks at this stage.
I have not given up the hope of turning this conversation to cars, and I hope we get there. But
planes, cars, scouting. Yeah, I think I can cover some of that.
Maybe we can do a motorcycle. I don't know. We'll see how time allows. But I'm gonna introduce the subject. Let's go back to Rich and the main action of the story. But I got a tidbit for you. I follow a British podcaster who he has built a business for himself. It's called Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. That is the name of the channel. The man's name is Ian Tyrrell. He's built a business for himself where he basically has this huge warehouse on a former British airbase, and he repairs supercars. Right, anything you want to think of, from 60s Ferraris all the way up to early 2000s Gallardos, etc., and things of that nature. And so he is my source for this story. I believe him. I have never heard him say anything that I couldn't check out. And you can just tell from the level of detail that he's just a cognoscenti. Okay, here's the story. One of his shows, he was repairing a Mercedes 300 SL gullwing.
Okay.
Are you aware of that vehicle?
I am aware of that vehicle.
So I have a model of it. In fact, I don't have a model of the 300 SL. I have a model of what is often referred to as the Uhlenhaut coupe. Uhlenhaut was the project engineer on the 300 SL, and he developed a race version of that car that instead of having a straight 6, had a straight 8, had side exhaust, and it had a little bit more aerodynamic nose than the 300 SL that was available to the public. But all of them were raced, and this Uhlenhaut coupe was a special one. I have that one as a little 118 model. Okay, so Tyrrell is talking about the mechanical fuel injection that was a real revolution in the 300 SL, allowing Mercedes to squeeze out 250 horsepower in 1954, 55 when it was introduced out of a 3-liter straight 6. That was unheard of power numbers, right? American V8s, like the flathead, they might have made like 140 horsepower out of like, 5 liters, 4.5 liters. So 250 out of 3 liters was incredible displacement. And Ian made the argument that during World War II, the Nazi regime, because they were landlocked and had fewer resources, they had access to very poor fuel, poor aviation fuel.
Okay.
And they were manufacturing aviation fuel from compressed natural gas and turning it into aviation fuel, and that had a lower explosive power than avgas or JPA, whatever we're using today. And because of that poor burning capacity of the fuel that the Third Reich was using, they invented this mechanical fuel injection. And in turn, that mechanical fuel injection allowed them to extract more power, not out of their engines, which were fine, but out of the fuel that they had available for their engines. But it also allowed them, and this is where my memory starts being a little fuzzy, so take this part with a grain of salt. Because the Spitfire and the Mustang were running on carburetors, their performance inverted was limited. They had to stop being inverted after a very short while. So they could do maybe, this is me putting it into my words, they could maybe do a barrel roll, or maybe they could do a spin to get out of a bad situation. But the more they flew inverted, the poorer the gas flow was, and so they'd have to stop at some point. Whereas the Luftwaffe could fly inverted, and they were able to do a better job mixing the fuel-air ratio so they could fly at higher altitudes and maintain power at different altitudes, where maybe the carburetors couldn't quite support higher altitudes as well as the fuel injection. So that's my tidbit. The 300 SL the thing when you get something from your grandfather, you inherited. Thank you. You inherit. I want to say invested. The 300 SL inherited mechanical fuel injection. It was the first vehicle to mass produced vehicle to be sold with mechanical fuel injection, which they inherited from World War II Luftwaffe aircraft. So whatever you want to, whatever that triggered in you, but go ahead. Yeah.
Alex, I don't know. I mean, the things I think about is German engineering, obviously, and it kind of goes back to World War II, where they were advancing their fighters and everything. Rockets, I mean, the V-1 rockets, they were very much on the forefront. And we were playing catch-up. The United States was playing catch-up for a very long time here. And so, it kind of gets back a little bit, I guess, to what I was talking to you about, the fact that we weren't looking at better solutions for our fighter fleet. And we kept trying to stick with the tried and true because that was politically, or that was what was desired at that point by either industry or whatever else, lobby groups, whatever. When we did have a better, and the Germans, they didn't have that. They obviously were just like pushing anything and everything forward here. So, we were very fortunate that we weren't into the jet fighter portion of World War II. We were still basically experimenting with, radial engines at this stage here. So, it goes back to, I guess, innovation, right? Innovation, any industry, the United States now, kind of a parallel. I guess we're having a big conversation as a nation right now about AI. And there are those that are like fearful of AI, and they're kind of like, well, we need to go slow, we need to make sure we legislate it, regulate it. And there are those that want to say, let's just open the doors and let's go here. And I'm not advocating possession, but what I'm saying is that we need to know that the AI revolution is going to change the world in the way that the locomotive changed the world. The way that we went from the industrial age, the architectural, agricultural era, the industrial area, and then the information area, when it was all about information. And now we're actually moving into the AI era. The AI is going to be in everything that we do. And we as a country, I think we need to make sure that we understand that, and we're leading the way in that area there, because there's a small gap, and the world's going to try to kind of claim this here. And we have the ability right now to make that something that the United States leans in at this stage. So, innovation is the key to growth and development, and we need to have people innovating in every industry right now as our country. Reinvesting in ourselves, finding new ways to do things better for ourselves.
Here.
And again, obviously, and it goes right back to the military. The best thing we can do is we are innovative. I mean, the reason why those F-35s are on the ramp over there is not by happenstance. It was by plan. It was a decade plus worth of work by previous leaders in that organization who started the conversation about what happens as the eagle is getting older. Everybody knew that was the case. And it was like, no, we need to start advocating for ourselves now. We need to start thinking about ourselves now. How can we do more of that? And we learned from another unit, which is up in Burlington, the Green Mountain Boys, and we said, wow, they were able to successfully put a plan together and convert from the F-16 to the F-35. Hey, we should start learning how they did that, and we should think about how we innovate and put our plan into place. And that's exactly what happened. The little jogs to the left, the little jogs to the right. A lot of discussions about the EX when it came out here, and back and forth and up and down. But we kept moving towards that due north point that we had established as a wing to obtain and fly the F-35. And today is the culmination of all those people, all that hard work, all the people that were been working hard logistically, engineering, planning, maintenance, ops, all that stuff, all the sacrifices they just made over the last couple of years, going to different bases, learning from those that are out there flying the F-35 right now, coming back and making now as a cadre, teaching our folks again on how to fly this F-35. That's it. That's why that plane is now going to be based at the 104th Fighter Wing here in Westfield, Massachusetts, and creating another chapter of fighter legacy here at the 104th Fighter Wing.
Good. So you mentioned camped at Moses as a scout, and I'll be going up there Saturday. We have a program launch to introduce the summer and annual programs coming up, and I'll be up there hopefully with our producer Pete Coles for some summer radio sessions. Can you take us back to your time at Moses and share your favorite activity, your favorite merit badge? Because we're coming close on the hour, so Alex will softball the rest of the way after that. Actually,
Well, you see, when we got the tablets and we started writing the 10 Commandments, that was my favorite part of Moses. They're of course talking about the Moses Scout Reservation.
Yes, the Moses Scout Reservation. So there are. I had a number of them. I can't remember how many, but how the sash was it was 6 inches wide, and it would usually go 3 or 4 across. And I came down pretty far at that point. I don't know how many. I kept my uniform for years. And when we had our children, we had 2 daughters, and my wife says, "Okay, you're not going to have a son, so what are you going to do with your Boy Scout uniform?" And I did end up passing it on to one of the troops there in the building, saying, "Hey, maybe you could use this down the road."
Very good.
There were some tough ones. There was dental, there was law, but I think, from Camp Moses' perspective is, when you got out there and you had the chance to do the wilderness stuff, archery was one that
It's a lot of fun.
I didn't know anything. I'm a city kid. I didn't shoot a bow and arrow. I mean, I know how to shoot a bow and arrow, right? So, and we had good instructors, and then, you were able to get the fundamentals down, and I can't even remember what the criteria was for actually having to earn the merit badge. challenge, whether it was you legitimately had to hit the target one time or
Yeah.
or whatever.
String a bow, make an arrow with the fletching. Yeah, I think you learned a lot more than you referred to archery expressions earlier, talking about leadership a couple times. So they taking the arrows
yeah, taking
and
care, yeah.
putting arrows in your quiver for tools. So I think that one probably
Yeah.
stuck with you a little bit.
But
So you don't want to knock him? Is that what you're saying there? Huh?
Look at that. Look at that.
the most challenging thing I mentioned before was when we went out there for the Klondike Derby, and I think we did 2 or 3 of them, if I remember. And by the second or third one, if I remember correctly, here, those that went out before, you're the ones teaching the kids now, how to stay warm, and when it snows on the ground and you're freezing, and how to do all that kind of stuff. And I thought that was pretty cool. You learn how to trap a rabbit, obviously dress a rabbit, those kind of things. Well, yeah, those are all great experiences that, a kid from the city, Springfield, probably wouldn't have had.
Yeah, still great experiences for any young man or woman that wants to learn them and come enjoy our camp and learn some skills.
I'm very bullish on scouting. I think that we need to provide these types of organizations that help our youth. I think especially now, because remember, when we were growing up, we didn't have these cell phones and we didn't have all these programs on the cell phones, and we weren't worried about screen time, and we weren't worried about people doing nefarious things online and doing all those kind of things. That didn't exist.
Right.
And now I think more than ever is it important to get our young men and women out and doing things. And there's a time and place for screen time. But we need to get our folks out to experience life, not to just witness it through a device or a screen. And so scouting can provide young boys and girls that opportunity to go out, learn about each other, learn about themselves, and really experience something real and tangible that they can bring
Keep with them for life.
to bring to their life here. The next app is just the next app, but sitting on a mountain in the wintertime in a tent with your Boy Scout buddies here, shivering, wondering why you're out there, going, okay, how come we can't go, how we could go back to the lodge here, our experiences that you probably never predict.
Definitely.
That's great. We're very much in the process of helping Moses come back, and that's it's something that General Rice has been. I think that's his goal. You said earlier that you were goal oriented.
Yeah.
I think that he's committed to himself to that.
When General Rice puts his mind to something, he achieves it. He has just done that throughout his entire career. He has been a huge mentor of mine throughout my career. He has provided me the opportunities. Most recently, when he was the 3-star Dang, the director of the Air National Guard, along with General Keefe, was the TAG here, 2-star, along with General Lefebvre, who was the 1-star. Those 3 general officers were in my corner for me to take over as the non-rated wing commander of the 104th Fighter Wing. And they believed in me. They thought that I was the person that could come into a situation where there wasn't a ready, available rated pilot at that time that could go into that role, and they gave me that opportunity. The lawyers hated it. The lawyers at the Pentagon hated it. General Rice stood firm, and he said, "Prove to me why I can't do this." General Keefe was firm. General Lefebvre was firm. They were all supportive of that. And one day I took the guide on the wing, and I became the wing commander, the first non-rated wing commander in the history of that unit. I'm not sure if there's ever been any other fighter wing non-rated commander. I don't know that, but I will be forever grateful to those 3 gentlemen for having the faith and confidence in me to give me such a unique experience. I mean, since 1947, there's only been a dozen or more wing commanders. I'm not sure exactly how many at this stage, and now I'm part of that here. So, General Rice, again, he's driving the train forward here to help Moses basically get recreated, and that experience for scouting at that stage. You guys are in great hands.
Well, we're kind of coming up to the end of the show here, and we really appreciate you coming by, sir. Would you do this again sometime if you're in the area, or we can zoom you in if you
Yeah,
want to join us?
guys, after just giving up the post commander's job down at American Legion, Post 129 in Carolina Beach, I suddenly find some time on my hands now again here, and I could clearly zoom in if you felt that I would add some value on something. I'm happy to do that. I end up coming up here. My mom lives in Springfield. I come up and visit her usually on a quarterly basis, so I can shoot you a text. You can shoot me a text, and I can say, yeah, happy to come by. Again, if anything I add value to the show, it is appreciated by you guys, and awesome. If not, don't worry, you won't hurt my feelings.
Oh, not at all. We have more questions I'm sure we could have hit, and we'd love to have you back. So
great.
But
Thank you so much, sir.
before we wrap up the show, we have to ask at least a couple of car questions, don't we?
Oh,
I mean, in the interest of justice and the American way, that's just something we say.
Oh,
as we wait. Yeah, we're like
Pete's in the booth down in the bin down there. Come on, you guys, wrap it up.
should be a text coming in any moment.
Yeah.
So I am the guy who skipped school to go to the library to catch up on Motor Trend, Car and Driver, Road Track. I am that guy.
You are that guy.
I am that guy.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping you'll ask me some esoteric car questions, hopefully from the 80s up, because that's sort of so I can demonstrate that. But what I'd really like to know is, so you just won, most people ask me how much, so I'm going to just throw out $10 million. You just won a $10 million lottery. That's post-tax, if that interests you. And what do you buy in the car? What do you put in your car barn?
Man,
I'll limit it to 3. So when I was in high school, I used to draw out the 15 or so cars that I would buy and put in my car barn. But you want to do top 3 cars that you'd want?
So I have to preface this by, I'm one of those guys where, the cliche is that if I won $10 million, there'd be signs, and the signs would be that I'd have a warehouse, where I would go every day, and I would sit there and I would look around and go, all right, what do I want to drive today? What do I
like Mr. J. Leno?
Yeah, like Mr. J. Leno. A little disclosure. So, one of the things about being retired and having worked hard all my life and having a very supportive wife, love you, she allows me to go out and kind of do some things that I might not be able to do, and so in 2024, I bought a brand new Corvette C8.
Okay.
And so I've been driving the C8 around, and it is an amazing car. It is the first mid-engine Corvette in Corvette history.
Production Corvette, because they did have some.
Yeah,
they did have
there
some
are other versions of it now that are even scarier.
Yeah.
This one basically is 500 horsepower, and which is, it sounds like, just 500 horsepower. It's very powerful.
But it helps you get up hills and things.
Oh,
right?
It helps you do a lot of things. And one of the things that when you buy a car like this, they allow you to GM allows you to come to a professional racing course out in Nevada, and so I went out to the course out there, and the first day is crazy, right? So they put you in a class and they're just drilling you on everything the car can do and why it's designed the way it is and blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, yeah, you're making notes and you're kind of looking and they're showing you videos and you're okay. And then in the second half of the day, you go out with an instructor. Now, there are cool jobs in the world, and then there are really cool jobs in the world. And so there are people out there at the school that their professional job is to drive Corvettes all day long around on the track at high speeds. And so my instructor, her name was Sky, and she came in and she goes, "Hey Pete, are you ready to go?" And I said, "Yes." She goes, "Okay, well you got to put your neck harness on." Okay, I put my neck harness on. She goes, "You got to put your helmet on." So I put my helmet on, and then I get in the passenger seat, buckle in, at that point. She gets in, has her ball cap on. She goes, "Are you ready to go?" And I'm like,
How come you're not?
Why do I look like I'm ready, to crash into a wall? And she's got a baseball cap on. And we took off. And she goes, "I'm going to show you everything this car can do that I want you to do tomorrow." And we were just, 140 down the straightaway, 100 miles in this curve. She's talking about, see the apex on this curve. I want you to hit that over here, do that. Don't brake, jump out. And I'm literally holding on. We're just going all over the place. And we run the track a couple of times. She goes, okay, tomorrow I want you to do that. And I left that afternoon, and I'm like, oh my God, And so, long story short, it's we were able to do all that kind of stuff the next day, and it really showed me the power in that, just the design, engineering, all that kind of stuff. But to your question,
Yeah. But no, that was a good. I mean, that's a great way to start that answer.
I have had in my life, I've had Mustangs, I've had Camaros, and now of course I've had the Corvette. But I have always loved the classic cars. I mean, I grew up with my buddies having, Chevy Nova SSs, Chevelles SSs, those were the cars, Pontiac GTOs, all of those cars here. And I think that if I won $10 million, that you would look out in my garage and I'd have my Corvette over here. And then I'd look at, and you see a lot of those, 60s, 70s,
muscle cars
that would be sitting there. And maybe you see a McLaren sitting there, at that point. But it would be.
Are you talking about the F1 or are you talking about current McLaren?
Yeah,
okay.
Well,
10 million would not be enough to buy you an F1.
You're right. So I would maybe have to just stick with the muscle car. But that's what you'd see all those muscle cars out there, because there's nothing like a V8 firing up and just purring, with so that would be it.
Very cool. I'm so glad. Was it a Skip Barber program or was it through GM?
It was Ron Foreman out there. I think it's that it's called here, and they basically have the C8, they have the Blackwing, the Cadillac Blackwing, which
sure.
If you haven't seen a four-door sedan on a track before, it is something to witness. That car is serious. That is a serious car out there. And they actually have around the track, and I think I'm getting the school name wrong. I'd have to look it up afterwards. But all the way around the track are condos. And in those condos are garages. And in those garages are Formula One cars. So there are people from all over the world that fly in to this track outside of Las Vegas, and they drive their personal F1 car.
They exercise their Formula One car that they bought in the past.
They do. So while we're on the inside tracks, all doing our things, they're all the way on the outside going around doing that kind of thing, and it's just spectacular.
It's awesome.
You gotta have some kind of money to have a condo here and have your own F1 car.
In 2019, two great things happened to me. The first great thing that happened to me, and it happened on I believe it was March 19th of 2019, is with his support, another team leader hired me to be a contracting officer, which I really love my job. That happened while I was at a class in California. So that's the first great thing that happened to me that year. The other great thing that happened to me was also during that time at that California class. My TDY budget for the agency did not allow for me to have a rental car, and so I was very close to the school, and I just walked. It was just a mile. It was fine.
Yep.
But I'm in California, and you know what those roads are like. So I went on my own dime, and I rented what? I rented a 2019 Cadillac CTS.
Yep.
Which, as you know, is a very close relative to the Blackwing, right? The Blackwing is a version of the CT6.
Yes.
But the chassis is
basically the same.
Relatively the same, right?
Suspension, there's small suspension.
Small differences, but it's an evolution of the CTS, right?
Yep.
So I had already read, I wanted to say, that the CTS was something else. And at that point in my life, I'd driven, a couple hundred cars, but of note, I'd driven Miatas, so I understood what a 50-50 weight balance small car was like, and I had driven, Camaros, Mustangs, Firebirds, so I knew what a large V8 in a relatively light car, rear-wheel drive, was like, right? So here I get this car. It was this beautiful burgundy red, and I have pictures of it because I had so much fun with that car. I put 1,000 miles on it in 1 week. I drove as much as I possibly
Were you in
could.
class?
I was in class, and I did very well in that class. It was a
Get his
it was
diploma.
a performance excuse me, it was progress payments calculation class, and I did well in the class, but I took every opportunity. And so that vehicle had 3 engines, right? You had a 2-liter 4-cylinder with 270 horsepower. You had a 3.6-liter V6 with 330 horsepower, and then you had the full-blown supercharged 6-liter V8 in the V model, right?
It moved through the right. Didn't it move through or was that the car that literally depending on how you were driving it would move through the different levels of the engine, or was that just a separate engine? I can't remember.
I don't want to say because I'm not 100%, but the and I don't want to tell you something I don't know for sure. But that mid-grade car with the 3.6-liter 330-ish horsepower V6 is what I had, and it was not all-wheel drive; it was rear-wheel drive. Now you know what the California roads are like. You know how much desert there is out there. Sometimes you can explore a vehicle's capabilities in safety because it is so deserted out there in the desert, right? And I know exactly what you mean. That you could push that car in an irresponsible way, load up the front suspension, and then get on the gas while the front suspension was loaded up, when by all rights the rear end should come out, right? But whatever Cadillac did for that in that vehicle, it just wouldn't. It just wouldn't. How is it possible that a 3,500-pound car with 330 horsepower, it should be able to break its rear wheels loose, and you should be able to take it around the corner with in an oversteer condition? But that vehicle had so much traction, it was beyond belief how much traction that vehicle had. You just, even though it wasn't all-wheel drive, in the dry, you could feel that rear end just hook up and squat, and maybe it would settle right in. It would settle right in. As soon as you got on the gas, it would load the rear, find all the traction, and shoot you out of that turn, regardless of RPM. Regardless of how kinky the corner was, you just couldn't get it sideways, and I was just blown away by that. So while I haven't driven a big 4-door on the track, I've driven a big 4-door in track-like conditions, and I know exactly what you mean. It's different from driving the Miata around. I had a first-generation Miata with the pop-up headlights called the NA generation, and then I had a third-generation Miata from 2006 called the NC generation. And similar cars, different flavors, but those were 2,500 to 2,700 pound cars. The Cadillac was literally 1,000 pounds plus heavier, and the levels of tractions were and control and feel better.
Better. Yeah.
And so yes, I know a little bit. I understand a little bit of the story you're telling. I do. I really do. And I want to talk more to you about. That's so great that you've had. How did you do when you drove your own car around the racetrack? Were you able to hit some of those?
So you end up driving their cars, right?
Oh, it wasn't your own vehicle?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Drive their cars, and it was. I mean, honestly, it was a little scary when we first go around that because, so you're following the leader, right? So the instructor's up front, and you're usually, well, we had 8 people in each cell or each group, and then each instructor would take those 8 people. So you basically, he's in or she's in the first car, and then the other 7 are behind here, and then you do follow the leader. So you go, okay, ready, let's go. And so now, say I'm right behind him, and he's in your ear the entire time, or she's in your ear all the time, and they're doing this by looking through the mirror, which I find is amazing. So he's driving she's driving at a high rate of speed, giving you feedback while watching you through the mirrors. It's not like there's a camera or anything like that. And so they're basically coaching you as you go through, like, you cut that corner way too late, you're braking. What are you doing? No braking, they're yelling at, get on it, come out of the curb, and they're like, get on it, and like, and they're giving you all that immediate feedback. Think about feedback, right? Mentorship.
Yeah.
And once I remember you're saying that, listen, going off the track is bad. Don't go off the track. And I'm like, check. Going off the track
advice,
is bad.
yeah.
Don't go off the track. Second, if you go off the track into the dirt, don't go back on the track, because we're going to have to come out. We're going to have to inspect the car. We're going to have to basically make sure there's no gravel and rocks up in the car and that kind of stuff. So go back to rule number 1. Don't go off the track. and you know, you just went out there and you did it. And by the afternoon of the second day, there were people, and the audience out there were varying ages and gender, right? And so there tend to be, you know, some older folks there. They didn't want to do the second part of the driving because we were driving, you know, all morning long, doing all kinds of things, braking, launching tracks, you know, in and out, back and forth, following each other, follow the leader. And they just were like, oh, no, we're done. We're done. So my group of 8 basically went down to a group of 3. And so it was
Which is awesome because you have more
leader
track time.
and the other 2,
Oh, okay.
you know? And so he's like, all right, we're just going to drive a lot. And the other 2 of us, you know, are like, yeah, we got it. And we just drove and drove and drove and drove. And we were back. He was telling us, okay, Pete, you fall to the right. Okay, you know, whatever the guy's name was, you come up over the left. Okay, Pete, you fall back and fight him. All right, now we're going to go. And then we're really going to try to hit that corner the right way this time, you know. And you guys, I know you guys can do that. It was the most fun. I was literally exhausted. And it's a good thing that you're kind of way out from the town. And they have their own restaurant there because you're too damn tired to go back to the you know the room, shower up, and go get something to eat. I mean, I just wanted to eat, go to bed after that. I was drained after just driving, you know, for hours at a time at a high speed around the track.
Great experience, right?
It was a great experience, and they actually have GM pays 4,000 of the 5,000. You pay 1,000, and there's 2 more levels. You have to pay the whole thing if you want to go out to those levels at that stage. So I haven't done that because my wife has been extremely generous with me and allowing me to have this beautiful car, which I appreciate and love her dearly.
As you told us extensively before the interview, I remember how much you thanked her.
Yes. Kathy, I love you. Thank you for allowing me to have this beautiful car every day.
That's awesome. That is such a cool experience. My wife is always saying, like, well, why don't you just go to Skip Barber, you know, just do a class. And I'm just like, I don't know.
You know, we have a group in our Corvette club that this is called the track portion of that, and they go to a local track and they end up driving. It's not like being out in Vegas and doing what we were doing out there, but it's, you know, it's driving around on the track. You know, I'm again, this is my, you know, emotional, logical side that fights with me because when you track your car, like my car is trackable. It has all the things that you need to do to track on it. But you know, you've got to change the brakes, you got to change the tires, you got to change the oil, you got to change transmission fluid. And one thing about Corvettes is that maintenance on them is not cheap. You know, so I basically say, yeah, I would like to track my car, but I can't justify, you know, the $3,000 to $5,000 that it's going to cost me every time that I track the car. So, you know, again, honey, thank you for the opportunity. I'm not going to do that.
Very cool. Very cool. And very cool of you to share that. You know, that's I see too many young people around me on the highways here who are like you and I, perhaps. They're curious about what their car can do, and they enjoy feeling the weight transfer, whether it's acceleration, braking, side to side, and they want to experience that, and that's awesome. And I love those guys because I am those guys, right? But it's obvious that they've never had anybody that help explain to them what about things like reaction time, tires, vehicular condition, you know, other people's reaction time, other people's ability to see you, and they're pushing their vehicle to a rate that I'll give them. Maybe they have the skill to control their own vehicle, but they're moving at a rate that other people will not be able to react to them in time if something goes out of control. And so I guess the tie-in with, you know, mentorship and scouting and giving young people good advice is the highways of, you know, the busy highways of Connecticut is not the right place to drive 80, 90, 100 miles an hour and to weave, because you might have it, but the guy next to you may never see you. You know, anyway.
And I drive my car. I mean, I'm assertive with it. I wouldn't say I'm aggressive with it, but I drive it knowing that I'm on the roads and I know what it can capable of. And there are, you know, a lot of times people will come up to you on the side. Like, it's funny, Teslas want to race me all the time when I'm in my Corvette. They always seem like they want to race me, you know, like, I know you're going to get me probably off the line.
To 100, they'll have you.
You got torque, but I mean, once I launch, I'm going to come up on you fast, you know. But again, I'm not going to do that on a regular roadway here. I'm not going to risk taking my car and possibly damaging it just to what, beat you on your car or whatever
Yeah,
else I-
to beat a guy I've never met.
I've never
Yeah.
met. So, you know, I'm a cruiser. I'm out there
Yeah.
cruising, you know, it's a convertible. And so I put the top down, you know, I got the 80s music on at this stage, you know, I'm having a good time. I'm relaxed. Sometimes Kathy's with me. A lot of times she's not. She's like, no, I know you just go drive,
Yep.
go drive. And I'll go out for an hour or so and I'll just, you know, find a path to go on and
Yeah.
drive around. And sometimes, you know, you just need a little R&R.
Absolutely.
Sir, I could continue in the car vein for at least a few weeks, but that's not practical. We're gonna have to eat and take showers. So
You guys, I think you guys have to pack up. Pete's starving in the van right
He
now. and I think
is,
you
he
guys
is.
gotta meet General Rice, right? Aren't you guys going
yes,
for dinner
yes.
tonight or
Oh
something?
God, it's already 5:22.
Got a meeting with
The
him
time
at-
just flew. I
Yeah, it's a-
genuinely thought it was about 4:30.
Yeah, you triggered us with another thought at the end, listening to 80s music. That's another area
Yes.
we go. So we
Oh,
got to get
so-
you to zoom back
Yeah,
in
well,
or
so we can
stop
zoom in
by.
for 80s music
Yeah.
because there's not much better than that in my opinion.
Agreed.
And I will tell you that one of the things that I do in retirement is I've always gone to concerts. I've loved music my entire life. I have no musical talent at all, zero. I wish I did, but I do have a chance to continue to go to concerts. And what I got coming up, we just went to Earth, Wind, and Fire, which was a great concert.
Yeah.
You know, I loved it. It was a great concert. But I got AC/DC coming up in Charlotte, and I'm going with two of my buddies.
Is Axel still fronting for them, or did they get?
no, AC/DC, so not Guns N' Roses.
But Axel was fronting for
Yeah,
AC/DC
no,
for a while.
He's not doing that, and it's in Bank of America Stadium, so it's stadium rock,
Okay.
right?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
outside
like
stadium rock.
like in the 80s.
And then another buddy of mine are going to, and I'm really excited about this. So we're going to the Rush show. Rush is going to be in Charlotte as well at another stadium, and so we're going to Rush. And then just because you know I grew up in this era and I love this band too, is we're going to go back and see Leonard Skinner and Foreigner in the fall as well because you know I love Southern rock too at this stage. So I mean, yeah, it's live life when you can because there are no guarantees. We don't have a finite, infinite amount of time, and you work hard your whole life. And so, you know, I still work. I'm in non-volunteer organizations, leading those. I just closed out being the commander of the American Legion Post 129 in Carolina Beach after 2 years, turning that organization around. I'm the president of the Carolina Beach Police Foundation. I serve on a couple of boards right now. One of them in Cambridge here. I volunteer in my town, in my community. You know, so you still have to live a life of purpose and still serve.
Right.
But at the same time, I am going to have some fun in retirement here before I leave this planet. And I hope the two of you do the same thing until I see you next time.
Very good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your
thanks
time.
again.
My
It's been
pleasure.
great.
Yeah,
Ladies
my
and
pleasure.
gentlemen, our
Pete.
thanks to Brigadier General Pete Green. And we'll see you on the next episode. You want to use your new theme or?
Play us out, Pete.